Don't know, sir.
I heard most of you are not ready to come in this trimester. Any member of IMF here?
No, sir, I guess.
No, sir.
So, anyway, before we start, any question, confusion?
No, sir.
You had a class before this?
Yes, sir, we had.
Let's start or wait for 2-3 minutes. Only 22 people. Okay. So if I'm not wrong, we were doing currency and interest rate swap. So it's just
Yes,
started,
sir.
I think. We started interest rate swap, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So just 1 minute, huh? Okay, sorry. So basically, we were doing currency and interest rate swap. I don't know why that is. Can you see the yes, slide?
Yes, sir.
So we started interest rate swap. So basically, I think we had done two. This case probably we have done. Huh? That is, it's not changing. What is happening? Just computer at hand. I don't know. Just 1 minute. It's not changing now. Can you see the change in the slides?
Yes, sir, we can.
So this one I believe we have done, interest rate swap. Two companies.
Yes, sir, we discussed about the case, the diagram also.
Diagram also. Any question on that?
No, sir.
Okay. So basically that is about interest rate swap. So I also told you that it is not necessary that two companies will know each other, and normally it is done through a intermediary, which is a swap bank, which is called a swap bank, and that intermediary can be anything. It can be a bank, it can be an investment bank also. Okay. So now we'll be doing currency swap. So
sir,
yeah.
Sir, there were two solutions, right?
Yeah, here this is in my desktop in the office. Yeah,
okay,
two solutions. If you want, I can show you. I can make two.
No, sir, no, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that's it.
So in fact, it is still in PLR, so that I may change to MCLR. Okay. Remember?
Yes, sir.
So that is about A. So can you start currency swap? Can you start currency swap?
Yes, sir.
So United Breweries Limited of India wants to set up a factory in Sydney, Australia. So this is an Indian company which wants to set up a factory in Australia. For this purpose, UBL needs a loan of Australian dollar 50 million for 5 years. Okay. Netbox Blue, a telecom company in Australia, wants to set up their establishment in India. So Netbox Blue is an Australian company which wants to set up its establishment in India, and it needs a loan of 2355 million for 5 years. Spot rate Australian dollar and rupee exchange rate is 1 Australian dollar is equal to 47.10 rupee. So if you multiply 47.10 and 50, you will get 2355 million. So therefore, both of them need equal amount of money. Got my point? So the primary condition for this currency swap is both the companies must need equal amount of money and for equal tenure, 5 years. So here if you see that UBL needs 50 million Australian dollar for 5 years, Netbox Blue needs 2355 million for 5 years. So and with the current exchange rate, if you multiply, then it is equal. So primary condition for this kind of currency swap is both the companies, they must need equal amount of money for an equal tenure. Now suppose UBL needs 50 million and Netbox Blue needs 2,400 million, and current exchange rate is 47.1. So they can do the swap only for 2355 million. So remaining amount they cannot do the swap. Is that clear? So for the minimum amount they can do the currency swap. Any question up to this point? Now, if you see the rate of interest available, so UBL, which is an Indian company, it has some advantage in India, and if UBL borrows Australian dollar, I repeat, if UBL wants to borrow Australian dollar, UBL, which is an Indian company whose requirement is Australian dollar, if it borrows Australian dollar, it has to pay 3%. But if it borrows Indian rupee, it is 9.5%. Okay. Netbox Blue, which is an Australian company which needs Indian rupee, if it borrows Indian rupee, it has to pay 10.5%. However, if it borrows Australian dollar, it has to pay 2.5%. So the reason is more or less simple. UBL being an Indian company, it has advantage in India, borrowing in India, Netbox Blue being an Australian company, it has advantage in borrowing in Australia. Make sense? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Acha, just tell me why can't this question I'll answer at last. See, Netbox Blue, if it borrows in Australian dollar, both the companies, UBL can borrow in India and convert that into Australian dollar. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
UBL, so one thing is clear, 2355 million is equivalent to 50 million. So suppose UBL goes to the bank, it borrows 2355 million and then converts at this rate to Australian dollar, which will be equal to 50 million. Similarly, Netbox Blue, it can borrow 50 million Australian dollar and then at the rate of 2.5% and then multiply this by the A and goes to the market and converts it into Indian rupee. That also it can do. Why UBL is borrowing Australian dollar and why Netbox Blue is borrowing Indian rupee, that we will discuss at the last. Okay. First part is clear. So UBL, why it is borrowing in Australian dollar? Because it is setting up a factory in Australia. Netbox Blue, why it is borrowing Indian rupee? Because it is setting up an establishment in India. Okay. So one thing is clear, if UBL borrows in Australian dollar, it pays 3%, whereas if Netbox Blue borrows in Australian dollar, it will pay 2.5%. Similarly, so Netbox Blue has a comparative advantage here. On the other hand, if you see these two, UBL, if it borrows Indian rupee, it pays 9.5%. If Netbox Blue borrows Indian rupee, it pays 10.5%. So UBL has a comparative advantage in Indian rupee. Any question?
No, sir.
And since both of them need an equal amount of money for an equal tenure, is it possible that UBL borrows for Netbox Blue, transfer this to Netbox Blue? Netbox Blue borrows from UBL and transfer the money to UBL. Is it possible?
So can you
I
please
believe.
repeat the question?
Let me clarify. If Netbox Blue borrows Indian rupee, it will be 10.5%. But if UBL borrows Indian rupee, it will be 9.5%. Okay. So UBL tells Netbox Blue, okay, let me borrow for you. You will be otherwise paying 10.5%, but if I borrow, I can borrow at 9.5%. But condition is you have to borrow Australian dollar from me. Why? Because if I borrow Australian dollar at 3%, if I borrow Australian dollar, I will be paying 3%. If you borrow Australian dollar, you will be paying 2.5%. Is it possible?
Sir, through a swap bank it is, but
Last class, if you remember,
Yes, sir.
I asked you that is, you
Loan.
go to a bank, try to borrow for yourself and for your friend.
it will give only for me, not for my friend.
But in this case, is it possible?
Sir, actually the bank will give me loan looking at my credential, but if
No, your credential is fine. Your credential is fine as well as the other parties. CC UBL's credential is fine as well as Netbox Blue's credential is fine. That is why the rates are given.
Sir,
Last class we discussed.
Sir, in this case it will not be an issue, right? Because both of them need the same amount.
Right. So
it
suppose
can go to
UBL,
the intermediary.
coming to the intermediary later. Suppose UBL goes to the bank and says, I want 2355 million rupees. Bank will immediately ask you, that is, why do you need? UBL will say that I want to set up something. All the papers are there in Australia, so that is why I borrowed Indian rupee, and with that I'll be buying Australian dollar. Possible?
Yes, sir.
Same is for Netbox Blue. But in the
Yes.
previous example, what did I say? That you are borrowing for yourself as well as you are borrowing for your friend. In this case, what is happening? You are only borrowing for yourself. Makes sense? Why
Yes,
you
sir.
are borrowing for yourself? Whatever you are borrowing, that the money you need. Only thing is you are borrowing in rupee, but you need Australian dollar. Similarly, the other party is borrowing in Australian dollar, and but borrowing in Australian dollar, but needs Indian rupee. So then you exchange. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Anybody any question? Ankit?
No, sir. No, sir.
Ashish Sinha, you are there? Why this problem? In any section, whoever I call, she or he is not there. Srey? Raghavendra? Sure. So whatever we have discussed, so UBL has an advantage in rupee loan, but it needs Australian dollar loan. On the other hand, NetBlocks Blue has an advantage in Australian dollar loan, but it needs a rupee loan. If UBL borrows Australian dollar, it has to pay 3%, which is 0.5% more than what NetBlocks Blue will pay for borrowing Australian dollar. Make sense? Similarly, if NetBlocks Blue will pay 10.5% on rupee loan, which is 1% more than UBL's borrowing cost of rupee loan. So as per the requirement and prevailing exchange rate, both the companies need equal amount of money for an equal period. So therefore, they can do a currency swap. Suppose UBL borrows 2355 million for 5 years at the rate of 9.5% and passes this to NetBlocks. And NetBlocks Blue, on the other hand, borrows Australian dollar 50 million for 5 years at the rate of 2.5% and passes this to UBL. Now remember, UBL is borrowing Indian rupee for whom? NetBlocks Blue? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So 9.5% on 2355 million, that is the rupee interest, will be paid by NetBlocks. Similarly, NetBlocks Blue is borrowing Australian dollar for UBL. So 2.5% on 50 million Australian dollar will be paid by UBL. So here also I have a diagram. Before I go to the explanation, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Let me go full screen. So year 0, UBL is borrowing rupee. Year 0, UBL borrows 2355 million. UBL passes this to NetBlocks. Okay. Year 0, NetBlocks Blue borrows 50 million Australian dollar. Passes this to UBL. So they are at par, because 50 million multiplied with today's exchange rate of 47.1 will give you 2355 million. So UBL is transferring 2355 million, NetBlocks Blue is transferring Australian 50 million, and today's exchange rate, these two amounts are equal. Any question, confusion?
No, sir.
So year 1 to 5, I told you that UBL will be paying interest on Australian dollar loan, NetBlocks Blue will be paying interest on rupee loan. So what is the interest on Australian dollar loan? 2.5% on 50 million. So see, year 1 to 5, UBL will be paying 2.5% on 50 million, that is 1.25 million to NetBlocks Blue, which NetBlocks Blue will be paying to Australian dollar lender. Year 1 to 5, 1.25 million. Any question? Year 1 to 5, 2.5% on 50 million Australian dollar, which goes to NetBlocks Blue, which NetBlocks Blue passes to the lender. Similarly, NetBlocks Blue year 1 to 5 will be paying 9.5% on 2355 million, which is 223.725 million. Repeat, NetBlocks Blue will be paying 9.5% on 2355 million, that is 223.725 million. Year 1 to 5, which NetBlocks Blue will pass to UBL. Now UBL will pay that to the rupee lender. I repeat, 9.5% on 2355 million, that is 223.725 million. Year 1 to 5, that will be paid by NetBlocks Blue to UBL, which UBL will pay to the rupee lender. And at the end of year 5, they will be paying the principal amount. So end of year 5, UBL will be paying 50 million Australian dollar to NetBlocks Blue, which NetBlocks Blue will pay to the lender. Similarly, Netbox Blue will be paying 2355 million Indian rupee, which it will pay to the lender. Should I repeat the entire process from the beginning? Yes, let me explain. UBL is borrowing, UBL is taking a rupee loan for Netbox Blue. So it borrows 2355 million in year 0. Year 0 is now. Passes this to Netbox Blue. I repeat, UBL is borrowing 2355 million rupees, passes this to Netbox Blue. Netbox Blue, on the other hand, borrows 50 million Australian dollar, passes this to UBL. So at year 0, they are at par. So rupee loan is taken by UBL, but it is borrowed for Netbox Blue. So Netbox Blue will be paying the interest on rupee loan. So how much? At the rate of 9.5% on 2355 million. So Netbox Blue will be paying 9.5% on 2355 million. That is 223.725 million year 1 to 5. And UBL will pay to the lender. Similarly, year 1 to 5, UBL will be paying 2.5% on Australian dollar 50 million, that is 1.25 million, which Netbox Blue will pay to the lender. And at the end of 5th year, they will repay the principal amount. Netbox Blue will be paying 2355 million, and UBL will be paying 50 million, which they will pay to the lender. Question, confusion? Anybody?
Sir, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Sir, in this case, there will be counterparty risk, right?
Yes, I was about to come to that. Yeah, your question.
Yes,
There is
sir.
counter. So see, first thing is this deal I have shown you without a swap bank. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, if a swap bank comes, what will happen? I'll take it. So swap bank again normally does not assume any risk or responsibility. In the previous case also, I told you swap bank does not take any responsibility. But of course, if you ask swap bank to take responsibility, naturally their share of profit will be very high. Anyway, forget about that. Now here, what is the counterparty risk? See, this kind of swaps are less risky in the sense both of them are borrowing for each other. So here, what is in the previous case also, because these are made for profit. So what is the risk? First of all, is there, you have to understand whether there is an exchange rate of risk, exchange rate risk. United Breweries Limited is an Indian company. It is borrowing Australian dollar. Does it have any exchange rate risk? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
I repeat, United Breweries Limited, which is, you can go back to the United Breweries Limited, its requirement is Australian dollar. So does it have an exchange rate risk? You said yes, sir. Who said? Nikhil?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Who all is there?
Sorry, sir.
Apart from Nikhil, anybody for this?
Ankit was there, sir.
Ankit. Ankit, there is exchange rate risk, no?
Yes, sir. If an Indian company will borrow from Australian dollar, definitely if the Australian dollar appreciates, then it's problematic because he has to convert his rupee into Australian dollar to pay back the loan. So automatically, if Australian dollar appreciates, then he has to shell out more money to buy Australian dollar. So there is an interest rate risk.
Interest, exchange rate risk.
Exchange rate, sorry.
Exchange rate, yes, sir.
What about Netbox Blue? Netbox Blue is borrowing.
Sir, same is the case, sir. If at all rupee appreciates or depreciates.
So both the parties have risk. That is what
Yes,
you people are saying.
Yes, sir. That's what I had one more question. Like
No,
because of this.
First, let us solve this.
Yes,
Solve this. So then my question is why they are borrowing in other currency. So if you say UBL is borrowing in Australian dollar because the rate of interest there is less, so there is a counter argument. Then why should Netbox be borrowing in Indian rupee, where the Indian rupee interest rate is high? The question is, there is no currency exchange rate risk. Why there is no exchange rate risk? Try to understand. UBL is borrowing this Australian dollar for its project in Australia. Now, when you set up a project in Australia, then your revenues from the project will be in Australian dollar. I repeat, your revenues from the project will be Australian dollar. I repeat, your cash receipts will be in Australian dollar. Is that fine? On the other hand, Netbox Blue, which is investing in India, its cash receipt will be in Indian rupee. So UBL, whose cash inflow in will Australian dollar, those Australian dollar will be utilized to repay the interest in Australian rupee as well as principal amount in Australian currency. On the other hand, Netbox Blue, which is an Australian company investing in India, its cash inflows will be in Indian rupee. So these Indian rupees will be invested in Indian rupees will be utilized in order to repay the interest in Indian rupee as well as principal amount in Indian rupee. So one way to manage the risk is, manage this kind of risk is when you do project in a different country. See, suppose you borrow in Indian rupee. Okay, so UBL, I'm talking about in UBL. Suppose UBL borrows in Indian rupee and invests the project invest the money with that, it buys Australian dollar and invests the money in Australia. So it has to repay the rupee. Now UBL will, from its Australia project, UBL will have receivables in Australian dollar. So if rupee depreciates, that is good when it will bring the money to India. But if rupee appreciates, then it will be losing money. So that is why it is always, in order to manage this kind of risk, so it is always better to borrow in the foreign market where you are setting up your business. So that is why UBL is borrowing in Australian dollar and Netbox Blue is borrowing in Indian rupees. So first question is answered. Yes or no? Anybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any question on this?
No.
Yeah, Nikhil, your next question.
Sir, it was about exchange rate risk, sir. So if at all exchange rate risk exists, then they would go for a forward contract, right?
Yeah.
That's it, sir. Like that was my question. Would they be getting into?
They will not. It is not that they'll go for only forward contract. There may be other contracts also.
Yes, sir.
There may be other contracts also. That is our last chapter. We can start today or we can start next class also.
Sir, I have one doubt. Sir, if you see that in India the borrowing cost is a tad higher than that of in Australia. So and we can see many Indian companies borrowing outside from India because of the cheaper loans. So how it will fit in this context? Because we are seeing right now that UBL is starting a that Netbox is starting a project in India, but it is requiring to have a loan in Indian currency. Why not it will borrow from Australia and do the same what is Indian MNCs are doing right now?
So in short, your question is, why should at least Netbox Blue will borrow in India? It could have borrowed in Australia at a lesser rate of interest. That is what your question is.
Yes, sir.
Just wait, I am opening a Word file. Can you see the Word file?
Yes, sir.
So if you remember correctly, what is your forward rate?
Spot rate into 1 plus DAR by 1 plus FIR.
Spot rate into 1. Spot rate into 1 plus DIR upon 1 plus. This is 1 year for spot rate, huh? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
So suppose you borrow in Australian dollar, huh? The net box blue borrows in Australian dollar. Okay? Yes or no? So it can borrow at a cheaper rate. Now it has invested the money in India. So it has to hedge this receivable because since it is an Australian company, it does not need Indian rupee. Ultimately, when it will take back the profit to Australia or all its receivable. See, what do you mean by this? See, whatever it earns in India means after meeting all the expenses, whatever money it earns in India. So that will definitely be A. Just 1 minute. That will definitely be what do you call converted into Australian dollar. That Indian rupee will be converted into Australian dollar. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? So today
Yes,
$1 is equal to 40. On Australian dollar is equal to 47.1 rupees. So after 1 year, if you borrow, so this is the conversion rate. So when you buy Australian dollar, you will not be buying Australian dollar by paying 47.1. It will be more. Similarly, if it is similarly, what will be the 2 years?
Spot rate into 1 plus DIR whole square by 1 plus FIR whole square.
So 1 plus DIR upon 1 plus FIR 2. So okay.
Yes, sir.
So third year. So this will be 3. This will be 3. With this, I will explain a lot of things. Huh? Okay. So first, one thing is clear: if you borrow in Australian dollar, so your receivable. I told you one major reason why you are borrowing, why NetBlocks Blue is borrowing in Indian rupee, and why what you call this company. UBL is borrowing in Australian dollar. The reason is their receivables will be in that country's currency. So that is why, first of all, there is no exchange rate risk. If you borrow in your own currency, because you always have a choice of borrowing in your own country and convert that into Australian dollar. Now, what is the interest rate differential? Okay, so I told you that when you borrow in the overseas market, you must see the interest rate differential and compare the interest rate differential along with the forward premium or discount. So in this case, if you see the interest rate differential between two countries, what was that? Even if I say 10.5% and 2.5%, the interest rate differential is 8%. Okay. So theoretically, your forward should also trade at a premium of 8%. So if your forward is selling at a premium of less than that, then only it is profitable to borrow in your own country for what do you call for the Australian company, that is NetBlocks Blue, and the reverse is true for Indian company. Okay. So basic idea is very simple. That is, when you borrow in your own country, you have an exchange rate risk. Though the rate of interest is less, that will not give you any additional benefit because your interest rate differential should be equal to, because this we did in parity condition. So interest rate differential will be equal to your forward premium or forward discount. Is that clear? So that is why it is not at all profitable. It will not be profitable. Now the point is, whatever forward rate we calculate, suppose it is applicable for both the countries. So for Australian dollar, if the forward rate is trading at a premium and if the Australian dollar depreciate, it is profitable. But the point is, how long it will be profitable? Suppose you borrow in Indian rupee, so you are paying extra. What about this company? What about UBL? If they borrow in Australia, they'll be paying 3%. If they borrow in India, they'll be paying 9.1%. So difference is 6.5%. So they will see if the Indian rupee depreciates by more than 6%, then only it will be profitable for them. Otherwise, not. So similarly, for Netbox Blue, the difference is 8%. If it is more than 8%, then it will be profitable for them. Otherwise, not. For them, it is opposite. If it is less than 8%, then only it will be profitable for them. Otherwise, not. Because when you will be buying either you will be buying or you will be selling, as the case may be. So when Netbox Blue will be buying Australian dollar, this will be the expected forward rate after 1 year, expected forward rate after 2 years. So they will have to buy to manage their risk. They will have to enter into these forward contracts, and that will not be 47.1. So as a result, whatever profit they make from the low interest rate, that will be eaten by the excess money which they will pay in for entering into the forward contract. So when Indian companies borrow in the overseas market, they always take this into account. Okay. Similarly, when the foreign portfolio investors, they invest in the Indian market, first thing what they see that how much, whether the Indian currency is stable or not. See, for example, for some period of time, more or less currency is stable. Why it is important? Suppose today $1 is equal to 75. Okay, so you bring in $1 million and invest that into India, it is equivalent to 75 million rupees. Okay, tomorrow when you sell your shares and take the money out of your country, at that time, if the dollar is instead of 75, it will become 76. So you will be paying 76 rupees to buy $1. Okay, so whatever profit you made by buying and selling of shares, that will be eaten by the exchange rate fluctuations. So same is the case here. Make sense? Any question further on this?
No, sir. No, sir.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Anybody? Another thing here is, here if you see, Netbox Blue is making a profit of 1%, but here Australia, this one, UBL is making a profit of 0.5%. Do you agree? Should they? First, if it is done through a swap bank, what swap bank can do? Either they can charge an upfront fee, or swap bank can tell them that okay, it can be more than one swap bank. Suppose UBL has a swap bank as well as Netbox Blue has another swap bank, an intermediate. So Netbox Blue is saving 0.5%. Their intermediary can say, okay, give me a share of that 0.5%. UBL is saving 1%. Netbox Blue is saving 1%. So their intermediary or their swap bank can say, give me a share of that 1%. Similarly, UBL is saving 0.5%. You can give their swap bank will say, give me a share of that 0.5%. On the other hand, if there is any single swap bank, it will take shares from both the parties. It can also charge an upfront fee, which I also told you in the last during our interest rate swap discussion. Okay, this is one part. Next question is, UBL is saving 0.5%, Netbox Blue is saving 1%. Should they share this 1.5? Total saving is 1.5. So, but should they share this?
So like they can, sir. Like my
No,
doubt
they
was.
can't. Why they can't? Of course they can. Of course, if the difference is very high, if they negotiate, they can. Okay. Now, why normally they can't? This is the rate of interest applicable on Indian rupee. And this is the rate of interest applicable on Australian dollar. In our last class, last example, both of them, they were in need of same currency, same tenure. Here the tenure is same, but the currency is different. That was an interest rate swap. This is a currency swap. Okay. So here the rate of interest of 9.5 or 10.5, that is applicable on Indian rupee. And 0.5% rate of differential. If you see 1% on 2355 million is how much? Just calculate. 23.55 million.
20.55 million.
Okay, and then another one needs 50 million, no?
Yes, sir.
So on 50 million, if you multiply this by 0.005, comes to 0.25 into 47.1. So what is the amount? So this is the saving.
Yes, sir.
Got it? So almost it is here. It is 23.55. They are saving 17 point something. So it's like that. So it's not that key since they are saving more. Apparently it looks, but if you convert that in the one currency, probably they are saving the same amount. Okay. So interest rate, though there is a differential in interest rate saving, but that will not be shared. Is that clear? Any question? Any question? Confusion?
No, sir.
Make sense? Interesting?
Yes, sir.
Any other question on this? So whatever we have discussed, that is written here. So how they can do a currency swap? UBL borrows 2355 million for 5 years at the rate of 9%, passes this to Netbox Blue. Netbox Blue, on the other hand, borrows Australian dollar 50 million for 5 years at the rate of 2.1, passes this to UBL. So for a period of 5 years, Netbox Blue will pay 9.5% on 2355 million, that is 223.75 million to UBL, and at the end of 5th year, Netbox Blue will pay UBL the principal amount of 2355 million. Similarly, UBL will pay 2.5% on Australian dollar 50 million, that is Australian dollar 1.25 million to Netbox Blue for a period of 5 years, and at the end of 5th year, UBL will pay the principal amount of 50 million to Netbox Blue. In the process, both the companies are saving in their borrowing cost. So this is the same thing written, and this is your A. Any question, confusion? Anybody?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So our currency and interest rate swap is done. Okay. So can we start a new chapter? If you don't have any
Yes, sir.
question. So this is, you can say, the most important part of our syllabus. So it is measuring and managing exposure. So first of all, translation exposure, transaction exposure, and also there is something called operating exposure. Okay. So here, most important translation exposure is easy, which will finish off very fast. Most important thing is transaction exposure. So normally I do the transaction exposure with two cases, one from exporter's point of view, one from importer's point of view. Okay. So those will start. So let me first explain you what do you mean by translation and what do you mean by transaction and what do you mean by operating exposure. Okay. So first, let me tell you translation exposure. Consider this case. So translation exposure is also called operating exposure. Achha, this translation exposure, before that, actually there are two kinds of exposure. One is called accounting exposure, one is called economic exposure. I repeat, actually there are two kinds, accounting and economic. Okay. Accounting exposure is also known as translation exposure. economic exposure is again divided into two parts. One is called transaction exposure and one is called operating exposure. So first is, what is the translation exposure or accounting exposure? This arises when you have a subsidiary in other countries. So consider this case. This is, say, Unilever. Head office is in UK. Okay. It has one subsidiary in Japan. What is the currency of UK? Pound. It has one subsidiary in Japan where the currency is euro. It has another subsidiary in Germany where the currency, it has one subsidiary in Japan where the currency is yen. It has another subsidiary in Germany where the currency is euro. Another subsidiary in United States where the currency is dollar. And what is the currency of head office? Pound. So where is the problem? Problem is, whatever profit is, this is the head office. Okay. So when you try, say 1 pound is equal to, say, $1.5. Okay, take 1.5 is equal to 1 pound is equal to $1.5. Say. So today the value of the assets of the subsidiary, is, say, 150 pound, $150, million dollar, billion dollar, $150. If you convert that into pound, equivalent to how much? 100 pound? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So at the end of every year, every company has to prepare a consolidated financial statement, taking the income as well as assets and liabilities of its subsidiaries. Okay. So headquarter will prepare a consolidated financial statement taking the assets and liabilities of all the subsidiaries. So today, when you are saying that the total assets of this subsidiary in the United States is $150, and today's exchange rate, that is pound 1 is equal to $1.5. If you convert, then in head office's book, that is equivalent to 100 pound. Okay, what is $150 here? It is 100 pound. Now, next year, suppose there is no change of these assets and liabilities of $150, but exchange rate changes from pound 1 equal to $1.5 to pound 1 is equal to $1.6. So the same $150, so there is no change in the assets and liabilities in United States subsidiary, but when you write in the consolidated balance sheet, it will be less than 100 pound now. Why? Earlier exchange rate was $1.5 per pound. Now the exchange rate is $1.6 per pound. So when you divide $150 by 1.6, it will be less than 100 pound. So due to the exchange rate fluctuations, there is a loss in the book of head office. So there can be a gain in the book of head office also. Okay, but there can be a loss in the book of head office. This is called accounting exposure or translation exposure, also called translation risk. Any question, confusion? Any question, confusion?
Sir, is translation risk same as exchange rate risk?
No. Exchange rate risk is normally transaction risk, but this is also happening due to the change in the exchange rate, of course. But this can happen. See, translation risk arises as soon as you have a subsidiary in a different country. So you are into translation exposure. I repeat, as soon as you have a subsidiary in a different country, you are entering into translation exposure. Is it clear? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
If you don't have a subsidiary, you don't have to translate your subsidiary's asset into your head office's book. You don't have to prepare when you prepare a consolidated balance sheet. Naturally, you don't have to convert the assets and liabilities of the subsidiary into your books. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So make sense?
Yes, sir.
Proceed further.
Yes, sir.
So this is what is translation risk. Any question? So what is the translation risk? Accounting and translation exposure arises when reporting and consolidated financial statements require conversion from subsidiary to parent company. So this is what we have done. Okay. What about economic exposure? So economic exposure arises because exchange rate changes alter the value of future revenues and cost. I repeat, economic exposure arises because exchange rate changes alter the value of future revenues and cost. Remember, the first day when I started the international financial management course, I had given you example of a tea shop opposite to IFT Kolkata campus. Remember?
Yes,
so
sir.
that tea shop today also I saw that man. He was sitting, he was selling tea in that cart. So basic idea is even if exchange rate changes, it's simple reason. So today $1 is equal to, it is hovering around 75, 75 point almost. So suppose from 75 it becomes 76. Even if there is no change in the price of oil, we will be paying more money to for importing of oil. Not only will we be paying more money if our currency depreciates. So naturally, even if you do not have a subsidiary in the foreign company, even if you do not have any transaction in the foreign currency, you will be exposed to foreign exchange risk. Okay. So your cash flow in the future will change. Okay. So that is what is totally called economic exposure. Now the question is, economic exposure is divided into two parts. One is called a transaction exposure. One is called an operating exposure. So transaction exposure is the most important thing because operating exposure you cannot avoid. Transaction exposure is the changes in the value of outstanding foreign currency denominated contracts. So as soon as you enter into a contract or enter into a transaction involving foreign currency, so you are entering into transaction exposure. What do you mean by this? Suppose you trade with Nepal. With Nepal, you trade in Indian currency. So there is a import or export, but since it is in Indian currency, that is why you are not into transaction exposure. But as soon as we enter into a transaction which involves foreign currency, what do you mean by which involves foreign currency? That means suppose you either export or import, where if you import, you will be paying in foreign currency. If you export, you will be receiving foreign currency. Whatever is the currency, you are into transaction exposure. Okay. Operating exposure, as I have told you, exchange rate changes alter the value of future revenues and costs. That is what is called operating exposure. The tea shop, which I have telling you, tea shop does not have a subsidiary in the foreign country, so he does not need to convert its foreign assets and liabilities. Similarly, he is not entering into a transaction involving foreign currency, but he is operating or his profits or future revenues will change due to a change in the exchange rate. How? As I have told you, that is, his transport cost can go up if the exchange rate changes, because he will have to pay more money to buy the fuel. Why? Because our import cost on crude oil will go up. If there is apart from that, if similarly he can get some advantages also. If he can get some other disadvantages also if our currency depreciates. He will be exposed to foreign competition. Okay, our goods will be costlier in the foreign. Our goods will be cheaper in the foreign country. So though he does not have any sale and all, but again that may alter his future revenues and costs. Okay. Question, confusion?
No.
Acha, if just considering this example, if Indian rupee depreciates, okay, today dollar one is equal to 75, so from dollar one is equal to 75, it becomes 76. What can happen to this man who is a tea seller? He will be benefiting. One thing we have seen, his production cost is going to go up because India will be paying more money to buy the crude oil, so the prices in the domestic market are likely to go up. So if that happens, he will be paying more money to buy for transport cost. His transport cost will go up, so as a result, his cost of production will go up. But do you think he will be benefited from anything? Theoretically, he can be, because our products will be less competitive in the domestic market. Similarly, foreign products will be more competitive in the local market. So he can buy the foreign product at a cheaper rate. Got it? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
But normal course, what happens is, if domestic currency, see, all are related. If your currency depreciates, naturally it will fuel inflation. Make sense? So we'll be doing this translation exposure. Okay. So there are normally 4 methods. So these I just explained because none of you will be doing translation exposure. It is an accounting job. Okay. Now, always remember, you can make a profit while make a profit means one thing is clear. When we have given an example, that is today the value of the assets of the subsidiary is $150 and today's exchange rate is £1 is equal to $1.5. So it is equivalent to 100 pound. But next, we have also given an example. Tomorrow, £1, if it becomes $1.6, that will be equivalent to less than 100 pounds. But it can also become £1 can also become $1.4. So it will be more than 100 pounds. Okay. So there may be a profit, there may be a loss. So if you see the balance sheet, you will see that there is one item. So one reserve is created, which is called profit. The heading is profit or loss from translation of subsidiary asset into consolidated balance sheet. Okay. So either you can have a profit, you can have a loss. So that if there is a profit, it goes to that particular fund. If there is a loss, it is adjusted with that particular fund. So a separate A is created. Okay. You can have a profit from translation, you can have a loss. Now, how do you transfer the assets and liabilities? So there are different methods. So first one is known as current non-current method. So have you heard about current assets, non-current assets in your accounting? Remember? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So what is a current asset?
Which gives future cash flows for less than 1 year.
So which can be converted into cash within a period or within the next accounting year. Okay? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
anything other than current asset or non-current asset? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anything other than current asset is non-current. Can you give some example?
So plant is a non-current asset or machinery.
Okay. It is expected that they will give us benefit for a period of more than 1 year. And current asset, another thing is benefits accrue for a period of 1 year, up to 1 year. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cash is a current asset. Inventory is a current asset. Why? Stock or inventory is a current asset. It is expected that you will be converting that inventory into finished goods and sell the finished goods and get cash within a period of 1 year. There may be exception, but this is the normal scenario. So current accounts used current exchange rate. So cash is itself is current asset. Cash, receivables, inventory, these are converted at the current exchange. Current exchange, suppose today is the balance sheet date, you are preparing the balance sheet on say 11th of February 2022. So whatever is the exchange rate, you will be converting all your assets at today's exchange rate. So current accounts use current exchange rate for conversion. Non-current asset or liability is converted at historical exchange rate. What do you mean by this? Suppose you have a plant which you bought 5 years back. So 5 years back, whatever was the exchange rate, that will be utilized. That with that you multiply and find out at what price they will be converted. I repeat, at what exchange rate you will be converting the non-current assets? When you bought the non-current assets on those date, when you bought the non-current assets on that particular date, whatever is the exchange rate, that will be applied. Suppose if 5 years back $1 was 60 rupees, so you bought the plant say for $1,000, so it will be always equivalent to 60,000 rupees. Is that clear? Any question? Anybody?
No, sir.
So income statement accounts use average exchange rate for the period. What do you mean by income statement accounts? Means all the items are income statement, average exchange rate, opening exchange rate and closing exchange rate divided by 2. Okay. So next one is monetary, non-monetary methods. So here they divide the assets under 2 heads. One is the monetary assets and liabilities. One is the non-monetary assets and liabilities. Now, monetary assets are defined as those items that represents a claim to receive or an obligation to pay a fixed amount of foreign currency units used currently. Just 1 minute. So, monetary assets and liabilities basically those items which represents a claim to receive or an obligation to pay a fixed amount of foreign currency units. So, use current rate. So what all are monetary asset? Cash, accounts receivable, long-term debt. Interesting part here is all these items are current accounts, current assets and liabilities except long-term loan. And interesting part to note is inventory is not included here, which is a current assets. So what is the difference between monetary assets and current assets? Monetary assets include long-term debt, which is not a current asset, and monetary asset does not include inventory, which is a current asset. So any items other than these are non-monetary assets. So they will be converted at current exchange rate and non-monetary assets will be converted at historical rates. So inventory is considered as non-monetary asset. Fixed assets is of course non-monetary and long-term investment. And income statement, average exchange rate, opening plus closing divided by 2. So then there is something called temporal method, which is a combination of monetary and non-monetary as well as current and non-current. So similar to monetary and non-monetary method, only thing is use current method for inventory. So inventory is included. That's all. However, current rate method is the one which is used by most of us now. The reason also I'll tell you. So all statement use current exchange rate for conversion. So whatever is your current exchange rate, that you use for conversion. Why? Because all over the world we are using International Financial Reporting Standards, so IFRS. So in India also we are using Ind AS, which is almost similar to IFRS. It says that assets or liabilities should be written at their historical cost. Okay. Assets and liabilities should be represented at their current market price. So that is why they are written as the current exchange rate. Okay, current exchange rate, not at the historical exchange rate. Question, confusion? Anybody?
No, sir.
I just have one doubt.
Sure.
Sir, the thing is that in the balance sheet, like some of the items like land or equipments, they are calculated on historical basis. Their prices are calculated as historical basis. So in that case, what will be the exchange rate?
Come again.
So, sir, in the balance sheet, suppose a company, multinational company is consolidating its balance sheet. So every asset, especially land cost is done on the basis of historical cost.
Historical rate. You're talking
Yes.
about historical cost in India. Suppose India. So all the companies, they were using historical cost. That is what you are talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Land.
Let me clarify. So basic idea here is, there is a concept called historical cost concept, and as per the concept, what we do normally, that is, assets and liabilities should represent at their historical cost. That is the price which we paid to acquire the asset. But the problem is, slowly we are moving from historical cost to, IFRS is saying that historical cost to present realizable value, or the what we call the current market price. Now, what do you mean by present realizable value or current market price? What is the logic behind it? That I'll give you. The first, let me explain you what do you mean by present realizable value or current market price. Now, if you have a ready-made market, then there is no problem. You go whatever is the market price. Like share has a ready-made market, but there are many plant and machinery which do not have a ready-made market. So how do you find the realizable value? So we say that is whatever you can get in an arm's length transaction. Arm's length transaction means the price at which you can buy or sell to anybody and everybody. Okay. So considering your example, that is land. Suppose you bought the land 20 years back at a particular price. Now today, when you are valuing the land at that time, if the price of the land is, how do you determine the price of the land? Actually, you can find the price of the land only when you sell it. What's my point? Under historical concept, one idea was, since you are not selling the asset, your purpose is not to sell the asset. That is one major reason you were recording at the historical price. Now I'll give you why we are from historical price we are shifting to present realizable value or present market price. The reason is, consider a case. Suppose company X, which has bought a land and set up a factory at a particular place 20 years back. Okay, consider it that factory company X set up a factory 20 years back. Now today, company B also sets up a factory just beside company X, and it buys a land of equal size. Now company A X or whatever it is, it bought the land 20 years back, say for 1 crore. The same land today will cost 100 crores. Okay. So what is the investment of company B? 100 crores. What is the investment of company A? 1 crore. Now, when you consider the return on investment or return on asset, company A will be calculating return on asset on the basis of 1 crore. I repeat, company A will be calculating the return on asset on the basis of 1 crore. Company B will be considering the return of asset on the basis of 100 crores. Just imagine the difference. Same land is used by both the companies, but in one case, the profitability will be very high. The return on asset will be very high because the value of the assets shown is 1 crore. And in another case, the value of the assets shown is 100 crores. So that is why the profitability will be low. So IFRS is saying, though it is giving an option that you can value your asset at historical cost, but it is always preferable that you value the asset at your market price or current realizable value. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that is one major reason why you use current exchange rate for conversion of assets from subsidiary to home country. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
So more or less, that is about translation, major thing about translation exposure. Okay. So these strategies, designing a hedging strategy, hedging basic objectives, all those things, those we'll be doing. Okay. So how, but another very important thing, let me tell you at this stage is, hedging. This is designing a hedging strategy. So how do you design a hedging strategy? Now, initially, everywhere, all the company, it was a cost center. Why cost center? The treasury division, the main job was to find out, I repeat, treasury division, main job was to find out, to manage the risk. I repeat, main job was to manage the risk. But now from managing risk, it has become, so everybody makes a profit. I repeat, from managing risk, now everybody makes a profit. Why everybody makes a profit? From a cost center, now it has become a profit center. So along with hedging, including Indian companies, they also do little bit of, little bit of speculation. If you remember correctly, I told you that is at the time of doing foreign exchange market that, whenever a company enters into a foreign currency forward or whatever foreign currency transaction, it has to show an underlying. That is, in India, you cannot simply buy and sell foreign exchange in the forward market. For that, you need an underlying. That means you can buy forward market only when you have an import order, and you can sell foreign in the foreign forward market when you have an export order. Okay, but along with that, I also told you that is FEDI, Federation of Exporter Dealers Association of India. They have given permission to the Indian companies that you 25% of your last 3 years turnover you can trade without an underlying. So all the companies in India, they are taking advantage of this. So whenever they find any, whenever they find an opportunity to speculate and make money, they all do that. So these cost centers, hedging has a cost. So these cost centers has actually become a profit center. Okay. Question? Anybody?
No, sir.
Centralization is key. Centralized cash management, what are the advantages and disadvantages, that I'll explain you with an example, definitely. Remaining portions, see, choice is faced by adjusting fund flows. This you can read. So basically, one major way to manage the translation exposure or transaction exposure is altering either the amounts of the currencies of the planned cash flows of the parent or its subsidiaries to reduce the firm's local currency account. The currency swap which we have done, you remember that why UBL should borrow in the Australian dollar market and why what do you call Netbox Group should borrow in the Indian rupee market. One is, since I will have a receivable in the foreign currency, I'll have to make sure that I also have a payable in the foreign currency. So whatever I receive, that I utilize to repay the foreign currency loan. So that is well, now we'll be going to the transaction exposure. Okay. So broadly, we'll be doing all this method: risk shifting, currency risk sharing, currency collar, cross hedging, exposure netting, forward market hedge, foreign currency option, money market hedge, future market hedge, pricing decision. Okay. So this currency collar is also called range forward. There is another name, cylinder. Many things we can discuss. Many names we can give. Okay. So if I start today, it will not be able to finish off. Okay. So all this, of which risk shifting, cross hedging, exposure netting, these are all theoretical. So currency risk sharing, currency collar, forward market hedge, options, money market hedge, future market hedge, and these are all what do you call numerical problems. Only pricing decision can also be discussed. So these are all different techniques which you have. So many techniques we'll be doing, and you can come out with your own techniques. Risk 15. So this will do. All will do. Currency collars, cross hedging, exposure netting. So all will do. So basic idea is, if I start, I'll be in between. Your class, of course, I am slightly ahead. Anyway, any question, confusion? Whatever you have done today, we have around 15 minutes on anything.
Sir, can we discuss other methods of translation exposure from forward contract exposure netting and all in these 15 minutes, if possible?
Forward contracts is actually not used for translation. These are the methods. Okay. So if you see whatever we have done, these are the 4 methods. Okay. Current and non-current, monetary, non-monetary, temporal method, current method. Can we use forward contract for translation? So that is what we are. So basic idea is here is the one which I have told you, that is why you are borrowing in the foreign currency, because your revenues will be generated in the foreign currency. I repeat, your revenues will be generated in the foreign currency. So you also take a loan in the foreign currency. Okay. Now, suppose you don't need a loan, but your revenues are generated in the foreign currency. What do you do? Can you? No. Here, if you see, reducing a firm's translation exposure by creating an offsetting asset or liability. So what is your translation exposure? You have a asset in the foreign currency. You create an equal amount of liability in the foreign currency. Is that okay? I repeat, you have an asset in the foreign currency. You have also a liability in the foreign currency. You borrow money in the foreign currency. So what happens? If the price of asset goes up, naturally the price of liability will also go up. If the price of asset goes down, price of liability will also go down. Is that clear? So you are trade off.
Yes, sir.
So nobody applies this. Instead, when we do transaction exposure, it will be clear how we can use this technique in order to manage the risk. Similarly, exposure netting is definitely a very good technique for transaction exposure. So all will be using all these strategies will be using for transaction exposure. See, this is one technique which people, easy to say, difficult to do, but it is not that nobody does. So increasing basic hedging strategy for reducing transfer, increasing hard currency, which is likely to appreciate, increase hard currency assets. So see, for example, US is a hard currency likely to appreciate. So I keep US dollar assets. Suppose I also have a subsidiary in Bangladesh, which is likely to appreciate. I reduce my soft currency assets. Easy to say, difficult to do. Decreasing hard currency liability, increasing soft currency liability. So basically, you may have a profit or may have a loss. But an interesting part is, the accounting standard, International Financial Reporting Standard says, if you have a profit on this translation that is not available for distribution of dividend, I repeat, if you have a profit in foreign currency translation, not transaction. If you have a profit on foreign currency translation that is not available for distribution of dividend. If you have a foreign currency transaction, profit on foreign currency transaction that is available for distribution of dividend. Okay. So if you have a foreign currency translation profit, that will be in a fund. If you have a loss, that will be adjusted from that fund. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
like in translation,
Hmm.
if at all we get more money because of depreciation,
Hmm.
you have mentioned like it will not be given as dividend or something. It will not be distributed.
So the amount of, see, it is a book profit. Suppose you have an asset in UK, a subsidiary in UK, Tata Steel Europe. Tata Steel Europe is a subsidiary of Tata Steel in UK. Suppose Tata Steel Europe total value of asset is 100 pounds. Okay, 1 pound is equal to 75 rupees. So it is equivalent to 7,500 rupees. So tomorrow exchange rate becomes, 80. So the value will be equal to 8,000 rupees. So you make a profit, but this profit is on book. You are not realizing this profit. So accounting standard says, clearly mentions which profit is available for distribution of dividend, which profit is not available for distribution of dividend. And there it is clearly written that profit which is realized in cash. Now, even if you realize profit in cash, not all of them are available for distribution of dividend, but which is not realized in cash, that is not at all available for distribution of dividend. So profit which is realized in cash are available for distribution of dividend. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. So what if it is revenue from the subsidiary?
Means?
Like headquarters will be preparing the consolidated statement, right?
Yeah. Revenue is available for distribution of dividend, and that is revenue is always at the current exchange rate. So there is no question of making profit. See, something you bought 5 years back, and now today due to the revaluation, basically it is revaluation of exchange rate. The revaluation profit is not available for distribution of dividend.
Yes, sir.
Revenue is your current income.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Again, what background do you have?
Sir, engineering, sir.
Good. And you have interest in learning so many things in accounts. That is what is interesting. So,
Sir, I have one doubt.
sure.
Sir, like in the PPT, it was showing like hard currency and soft currency. So what of that? Like
The currency which is likely to appreciate is hard currency. So Indian rupee and US dollar. Suppose dollar is likely to appreciate, hard currency. Euro is likely to depreciate, soft currency, against Indian rupee. Got it?
okay, so yeah.
So my question is very simple. Suppose today you have a subsidiary in UK. 1 pound is equal to 100 rupees. And UK is a hard currency. That means it is likely to appreciate. So you have 1 million pound is your asset. So it is equivalent to how much? 1 million divided by 100. 1 million multiplied by 100, that is 100 million rupees. 100 million rupees is your, what do you call it? 100 million rupees is your Indian value. On the other hand, suppose, repeat, suppose, suppose pound is a hard currency, likely to appreciate. So from 100, it can become 102. So same 100 million rupees will become 102 million rupees. So you will make a profit. So here we are talking about exposure. That is where you can have a loss. So if 100 becomes 98, that is the currency is likely to depreciate. It is a soft currency, and in that case, your 100 million rupees will become 98 million rupees. So due to currency exchange rate fluctuation, you will lose 2 million rupees. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
So we are majorly left with, I think I have 3 more sessions, of which last session will be of 2 hours. Huh? So we are majorly, left with mainly 2 things. One is what do you call this managing exposure, and the other is raising funds and raising funds in the foreign market, international market, and what are the different instruments. Along with that, if I forget, just remind me about transfer pricing. Okay, transfer pricing. Then there is another thing. What we call another thing. What transfer pricing will do. This one will do. What do you call? Transfer pricing will do. Managing will do, and along with that, we'll also do. If we have time, little bit of discussion on trade finance. Okay. Anything? Any question, confusion? So next week I'll give you the assignment. Probably it will be a group assignment, hopefully. So 4 to 5 students per group, that I will tell you. Cases, and not same case will be given to everybody. There will be 10. So each section, each group will have 1 case. Okay. So everything will be discussed in the next week class. So accordingly, we distribute. So you have 3 more minutes. If you have any thing. Anybody? So when is your exam, by the way? Expected.
Sir, we don't have any specific date as of now, but it should be around the 3rd week of March.
3rd week of March. Okay, but it will be and till now no indication of online or offline.
Sir, we don't have any specifics right now.
Okay. Anyway, let's see. Hope for the best. That is what we can do. So if you don't have any question, we'll call it a day. Two more minutes. Okay. Bye then.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.